Chicago, 1907. State Street at dusk, and the stone face of the Marshall Field store glows like a courthouse that forgot its manners. A shopper pushes through the revolving door, and the noise of the street falls away behind her. Marble underfoot, perfume in the air, an elevator operator calling the floors. She rides up to the 5th level, tips her head back, and the parcel in her hand is forgotten. Above her spreads a ceiling of Tiffany glass, more than 1 million pieces of it, arguably the largest glass dome of its kind ever built. People came in for a spool of thread, and they left having stood, briefly, inside something holy. It was open to anyone off the street, dollar or no dollar. These were the last rooms a whole city would dress up to enter together. The true cost of losing them never once showed up on a receipt. So here's the question worth the next half hour. What did America lose when its downtown palaces stopped being palaces, and why do the buildings still stand? And hold one strange detail. One of these places still plays its own music every single day. 1,000 people walk beneath it, and almost none of them know what they're standing under. The marble's all still here. The meaning, though, has been quietly forgotten. Go back up to that dome. It hangs over the South State Street building in Chicago, finished in 1907. The man who designed it was Louis Comfort Tiffany, by then the most famous name in American glass. His studios cut tiny facets from Favril glass, the iridescent kind he'd patented back in the 1890s. Then they set each piece into a curved iron frame 50 feet over the sales floor. More than 1 million pieces, by most counts closer to 1.5 million. It remains the largest Tiffany dome ever built. An earlier store had burned in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, and the company simply rebuilt, larger each time. By 1907, people were calling the place a Cathedral of Commerce. A firm that sold gloves and dinner plates had hired the finest decorative artist in the country. It hung his masterpiece out over the aisles, where a bank teller on her lunch break could stand under it for free. That was the whole gamble. Beauty as a business plan. A woman who feels the hush of a great room will linger, and a woman who lingers in the end buys. The dome did something the accountants never planned for. It turned a store into a landmark, and Meet Me Under the Tiffany Dome came to mean something to a Chicagoan. Daniel Burnham drew the building beneath it, the architect who had just planned the great 1893 World's Fair. He gave Fields a full city block and a steel frame 12 stories tall. Inside, a shopper could look straight up through 5 open galleries into that shimmer of gold and blue. The store's own motto said it best in 5 plain words: "Give the lady what she wants." And nobody had to buy a single thing to see any of it, a detail worth holding on to for later. So a store spent a fortune on a ceiling few customers would ever really study. What else did it spend that kind of money on? And why? The answer starts, of all places, with lunch. In 1907, the same year the dome went up, Fields opened a tea room on the 5th floor and called it the Walnut Room. By most accounts, it was the first restaurant ever set inside a department store. White tablecloths, chicken pot pie, a fountain running quietly in the middle of the floor. And every December, they wheeled in a tree. A great fir, 40 feet or more of it, stood lit from crown to floor in the center of the dining room. Children ate their lunch beneath that tree, and some of them, old now, still talk about it. The grand stores added art galleries, nurseries where a mother could safely leave a small child, full post offices, pet departments, and barber shops. Wanamakers in Philadelphia hung actual oil paintings on its walls. Fields even made its own candy upstairs, the Frango Mint. Then came the escalators. Macy's had installed a moving wooden staircase as early as 1902, and the great stores soon followed. They carried shoppers up, floor by floor, through the shining light court. And every December, that escalator had one magnetic destination: the toy floor. A child rode up through 5 stories of perfume and fur and cut crystal. The doors opened, at the top, on a world built entirely for them. That ride is the thing people remember most, less the price of anything than the pure feeling of rising toward it. What's striking is how little of this made direct money. The galleries, the nurseries, that towering tree, none of it rang a register on its own, and the stores spent the money regardless. They were building the one room where a whole city kept its holidays, and a room like that earns a loyalty no discount could buy. That loyalty had to start somewhere, with one plain idea most merchants thought was pure madness. A single man in Philadelphia had bet his entire business on it. His name was John Wanamaker. In 1876, he opened a store inside a converted railroad freight depot in Philadelphia and called it the Grand Depot. He built it on a rule that sounds obvious now and sounded reckless then. One price, marked on a tag, the same for everyone who walked in. Before Wanamaker, buying almost anything meant haggling. The merchant sized up your coat, guessed at the weight of your purse, and named a number. A widow often paid more than a banker for the very same bolt of cloth. Wanamaker called that dishonest, so he printed the price on a tag and let it stand. Then he went further still. If the goods disappointed, he said, bring them back for the money. A money-back guarantee in an age when every sale was final and every buyer took his chances. Rival merchants warned him he'd be robbed blind inside a year. He wasn't. People trusted the store, and trust was the most profitable stock he carried. He held one of the country's first great white sales in 1878. In 1896, he bought the old A.T. Stewart store in New York, a cast-iron palace itself. He even served for a time as Postmaster General of the United States. One of his young protégés, Harry Gordon Selfridge, carried these methods to Marshall Fields and later to London. The phrase "the customer is always right" is often laid at Wanamaker's door, and he genuinely meant it. The department store was an invention of architecture, yes, and just as much an invention of trust. A stranger could walk in, hand over a week's wages, and expect to be treated fairly. For a working family in 1890, that came remarkably close to a miracle. Wanamaker had made the palace safe to enter, and now he wanted to fill it with sound. He would give his city music on a scale no church in America could hope to match. When Wanamaker built his new marble store in Philadelphia, he gave it a courtyard. The Grand Court was a great open well, rising the full height of the building, and it needed a voice. So Wanamaker went hunting for the largest instrument in the world and found it, of all places, in St. Louis. It had been built for the 1904 World's Fair, the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. When the fair closed, it sat crated in a warehouse, unwanted and unsold. Wanamaker bought the whole thing, and it came east in 13 freight cars. 13 rail cars of pipework and wind chests hauled across half a continent to a department store. It first sounded in the Grand Court in 1911. That same year, William Howard Taft, a sitting president, stood in the court while the great pipes played. Then Wanamaker discovered a problem. Even this monster, it turned out, wasn't loud enough to fill his courtyard. So he built an organ factory right inside the store and kept enlarging the instrument for decades. His son, Rodman Wanamaker, carried the work faithfully on after him. The console alone became a machine of 6 keyboards and hundreds of controls, an organist commanding it like a pilot. Rank by rank, the thing grew until it passed 28,000 pipes, and it holds a certain title to this day: the largest fully working pipe organ in the world. Larger instruments have been built, but this is the largest that still plays, every rank of it alive. Twice a day, a store organist filled a retail floor with the sound of a cathedral. Shoppers stopped mid-aisle. Strangers stood together in the wash of it, holding their paper bags, saying nothing at all. No ticket, no collection plate, the grandest music in the city, given away for free between the glove counter and the shoe department. A store this grand, you'd think, should have been only for the carriage trade. And yet the single most democratic idea in American retail was taking shape at that moment. One city to the north, down in a basement. Boston, 1909. Beneath a fine store on Washington Street, Edward Feline opened a floor with no marble on it whatsoever. He called it the automatic bargain basement, and it ran on one of the strangest rules in retail history. Every single item carried a price and a date. The longer a thing sat unsold, the cheaper it grew, automatically, on a fixed schedule. 12 selling days on the floor, and the price dropped a quarter. 18 days, and it fell by half. 24 days, and 3/4 of the tag was simply gone. After 30 days, whatever hadn't sold left the building for good. It went to charity, given away, rather than marked down one more time, and the clock, rather than any clerk, ran the entire floor. Did it work? Year after year, the crowds gave their answer. A coat you loved on Monday might be half price by the weekend if some other shopper didn't seize it first. So people gambled, watching a garment for days, praying it survived to the next markdown. The lines outside on a big markdown day ran clear around the block. It was the most democratic room in the American department store. Upstairs, beneath the chandeliers, sat the silk and the sable. Downstairs, a schoolteacher or a dock worker could carry home a designer label for the price of a plain one. The basement, in the end, made the whole cathedral honest. The store had been founded by Edward's father, William Feline, an immigrant merchant, and Edward meant the basement as more than a bargain floor. He was a reformer at heart, and he helped bring the credit union to America. He believed a store could lift people, and the basement was his proof. Years later, that same floor gave the country the running of the brides. Women raced the doors at dawn for wedding gowns marked down to almost nothing. The markdown clock he set ticking in 1909 is the direct ancestor of every flash sale and countdown timer online tonight. So the palace fed and dressed the city and gave it music besides. The real question is what the city gave back and what it stood to lose. Going downtown to shop was, for generations, an occasion. A woman put on gloves and a hat simply to do it. A man wore a jacket and a tie to go and buy a wrench. The store never demanded any of that finery. People offered it because the place felt like it deserved the effort. The department store had quietly become the city's shared front room. It was where a person met an old friend under the great bronze clock. The store kept the city's calendar too. Easter hats in the spring, the toy floor at Christmas, the windows changing with every season. There were few places like that left in American life. The church divided people by their faith, and the private club divided them by their class. The store, for a few hours at a stretch, divided them by almost nothing at all. For an immigrant family especially, it offered one American room that asked no questions at the door. Now, a fair objection belongs right here. These were businesses, and businesses close every week without a tear shed. Nobody, after all, holds a funeral for a hardware shop, so why mourn a company that sold handbags and finally went under? Because most businesses are only ever businesses, and a rare few quietly become something closer to infrastructure. The grand downtown store was civic infrastructure, dressed up as commerce. It was the one grand interior a working family could enter without a ticket, a fee, or an invitation. Take that away, and a city loses the one room where all of its people once stood together. That's a public loss wearing a private label, and it came due faster than anyone downtown expected. So what actually emptied these places out? The answer, oddly enough, begins with a road and ends with a spreadsheet. The road came first. After the war, the federal government paved the way with the Highway Act of 1956. New roads, cheap gas, and cheap suburban land pulled families out of the old city center. That same year, an architect named Victor Gruen opened something new in Edina, Minnesota. Southdale Center was the first fully enclosed shopping mall in the country, climate-controlled, with parking all around it. Gruen imagined it as a new town square for the suburbs. The town square never quite arrived, but the parking lot did, and the shoppers followed it out of downtown. The UMI's great stores opened suburban branches to chase them, and every branch drew a little more life from the palace back at the center. By the 1980s, thousands of enclosed malls dotted the country, and the downtown flagship had become the expensive, half-empty one. That was the slow part. The fast part arrived in the 1980s, straight off Wall Street, and here's where the story turns. We've been speaking as if these places simply died of neglect, and they didn't, not entirely. A good number of them were taken apart on purpose, for profit. The decade brought the leveraged buyout into full flower. A financier borrows enormous sums, buys a company with that borrowed money, then makes the company itself repay every dollar. The great retail names became prime targets. The most aggressive raider was a Canadian developer named Robert Campeau. In 1986, he seized Allied, and in 1988, he took Federated itself, with the crown jewel of Bloomingdale's inside it. He paid with junk bonds, billions in high-interest debt floated by Drexel Burnham Lambert. He overpaid wildly. In a bidding war, the newspapers came to call Campeau's folly. To service that mountain of debt, everything the company owned came up for cold judgment. Here, at last, is the reframe this whole story has been building toward. Look at a marble palace the way that Raider's spreadsheet looked at it. That Tiffany dome cost a small fortune to insure and to heat. Those 6 grand floors sat on downtown land worth far more emptied out and sold off. The organ, the tea room, the block-long granite front, on the balance sheet, all of it read as expense and square footage and pure risk. So what were these raiders actually buying? 2 plain things: the land beneath the marble and the famous name they could bolt onto almost anything. The beauty, in short, had quietly become a liability. By 1988, the story had quietly changed its subject: real estate, debt, and a name you could staple onto a suburban box. Campeau should, by rights, have been king of American retail. Within 2 short years, his empire collapsed into the largest retail bankruptcy the country had ever witnessed. Campeau fell in 1990. His debts crushed the company, and Federated tumbled into bankruptcy behind him. But the palaces didn't come back. The company that climbed out of the wreckage had learned one hard lesson from all that ruinous debt: efficiency. 1 warehouse system, 1 advertising budget, 1 set of buyers, spread across as many stores as possible. Through the 1990s, the survivors merged, and merged again. Then, in 2005, Federated bought the May Company outright, and that single deal pulled dozens of beloved local stores under one roof. Hudson's in Detroit, Dayton's in Minneapolis, Kaufmann's over in Pittsburgh, Filene's in Boston, and in Chicago, Marshall Field's itself. Each of those names carried a century of a city's memory, and Federated had decided the country needed only one. On the 9th of September 2006, it happened all at once. Overnight, the old signs came down, and dozens of historic stores became Macy's. Chicago woke up, and Marshall Field's was gone. The building stood exactly where it always had, dome and all, now wearing a stranger's name. The city did not take it quietly. People pinned on buttons that said Fields would always be Fields. They boycotted, they wrote letters by the thousand, and they held that red star personally responsible. An entire city grieved a store as though a relative had been renamed against her own will. The protest, in the end, changed nothing. In 2007, the parent company renamed itself outright, and Federated became Macy's, Incorporated. They kept the Frango Mints, and they kept the Walnut Room with its towering Christmas tree, but none of it brought the name back. The grief, though, ran far deeper than socks and handbags. The name over the door had somehow become part of the city's own name. Take one of them down, and something in the other quietly goes with it. And so the great American palaces became, mostly, a single red star. The marble stayed put while the meaning walked out through the revolving door. They could change every sign in a single night. 4 things inside these buildings, though, were bolted down too deep to move, and they are still there. Start with the clocks. On the corner of State and Washington in Chicago, 2 great bronze clocks still hang out over the sidewalk. They've marked that corner since the 1890s, and cast into the metal are the words Marshall Field and Company. The company retired that name back in 2006, but the clocks never got the message. They still say Fields in solid bronze above a Macy's door. Step inside and look up. The Tiffany dome is exactly where Louis Comfort Tiffany set it, more than 1 million pieces still catching the afternoon light. Below it, the aisles run busy from morning to close, and almost no one ever tips a head back to see it. Down in Philadelphia, the Grand Court still keeps its great bronze eagle, brought home from that same 1904 fair. The whole city still says, "Meet me at the Eagle." But the eagle isn't the miracle here. Remember the promise from the start of this story, that one of these palaces still plays its own music every single day. This, at last, is the one. The Wanamaker organ in what is now a Macy's in Center City, Philadelphia, has never once fallen. Silent, it still plays. Twice a day, most every day, the way it has since 1911. A store organist climbs to the console, and the largest working pipe organ on earth fills a department store with sound. The same cathedral wash that stopped shoppers cold in 1911 pours down over the cosmetics counters. 1,000 people shop through that music without once wondering where it comes from. They walk across marble laid down for John Wanamaker himself. They pass beneath pipes hauled here in 13 freight cars, and mostly they check their phones. That organ is the living voice of the vanished palace, still singing to a crowd that has forgotten how to listen. 4 things they could never quite unbolt: the clocks, the dome, the eagle, and the organ, all still exactly where the palace left them. The Marshall Fields building is a protected landmark now. Some old palaces became hotels or casinos or luxury condominiums, and one great old emporium is now a Target. The old Wanamaker building keeps offices on its higher floors now, but at street level, the court and the organ endure. Which brings the story back to where it began. What exactly does a city lose when its single greatest room falls quiet? Zoom out, past Philadelphia, past Chicago, past all the marble entirely. These buildings were the one grand room that belonged to everyone and, at the same time, to no one. No money was ever needed to enter, only the simple wish to. For 100 years, the department store was where a city, in effect, rehearsed being a public. Rich and poor, native and newcomer, under one dome, on one shared afternoon. That's a rare thing for a nation to build, and rarer still to keep. What sold the palaces off was ordinary and reasonable: debt, efficiency, and cheaper land out along the highway. None of it really was villainy. It was arithmetic, and arithmetic, more or less, always wins. A stockroom, after all, is a fine and useful thing. It asks nothing of the people who pass it and offers them nothing to look up at. But here is the honest ledger of the trade. A city gained a more efficient store and lost the grandest room it had ever agreed to share. The marble is still standing there, perhaps, to remind it. That, in the end, is what these palaces truly were, and what a stockroom can never be. If you're the sort who still looks up inside an old building, then this channel was built for you. Now picture the Grand Court in Philadelphia at noon next week. An old man stands near the eagle holding a small girl by the hand, and when the organ begins, he stops. He tips his head back the way that Shopper did beneath the dome in 1907, and he points up. The child follows his hand to the gold rank of pipes, and he tells her quietly, just to listen. That, right there, is the whole inheritance, the habit of looking up, passed carefully from one hand to the next, while it lasts. The organ still plays at noon in Philadelphia. 1,000 people shop beneath it, and not one of them looks up. That's the whole story.